find this. Let's see. Welcome, Alex, to Data Science Learning Community, Devops for Data Science Book Club, Cohort 2, I think you guys are. Um, and yes, this is the first cohort since the book was written. We did the first
Since
cohort
it's
like while
done.
you were writing the book, and it's been interesting to see how some things, changed quite a bit, like the order and I think the
Yeah.
final content since that first version. Yeah, they've been reading since August of last year, and so it's exciting to have a little Q&A here
Yeah.
to wrap up the club. Um,
Well, thanks for having me. It's you work on a project like this for a long time, and it's just really exciting to find out that people are actually reading it. So I really appreciate the chance to get to chat.
some um, so I guess while we let some things come in here, I just am curious to start with um, now that it has been a little bit since you wrapped up the book. I'm curious if there's anything that like you wish that you could go back. I mean, probably not wish that strongly because the book is finished, but yeah, what would you change if you were like taking a month to clean things up, if anything?
I don't know that there's much like to be honest, I have not thought about the book much since I finished it, mostly
That's
because my son was born the month
yeah.
after the book came out, and so like just have not thought about the book much. I've been
Okay, fair enough.
doing life and like but I think actually like that's sort of a right. And so I haven't thought that hard about the book itself. I do think though like right I really set out to write a book that was really focused on a lot of like basic concepts.
Right.
And I think I feel really good about the fact that like even as the world of development has changed so much in the last right I finished the book a little over. I mean, I finished writing it like 2.5 years ago, right?
Right.
Um, and then it came out a little less than 2 years ago. But like, I think I feel pretty good that the stuff in the book is still true, right? There's nothing there that all of a sudden has been invalidated. I do think obviously if I were writing it today, like there are a lot of questions about like how can I make an AI do this effectively, right? Because I think there's a lot of things in there that all of the like do it kind of sections are very by hand, and that's sort of intentional. But I also think like the idea of how would you use an AI to do some of this? How would you accelerate all of this if you had an AI handy? Or they just like weren't questions I was like, I only even used AI to like help with like reviewing chapters towards the very end of the book. For most of the book, like there was no AI to be used. Or like I wasn't an early enough adopter of ChatGPT to use it for really any of the writing. And so I think like that's the obvious piece to me that in today's world, like it's kind of if I were to work more on the book, this book cannot exist without talking a bit about LLMs. And so I think both like the idea of using LLMs to do some of this stuff, and then also like there's a lot of stuff in here where a lot of data and analytics and data science teams are sort of like they're LLM adjacent and thinking about how all that works. Thinking about like I would probably add some sections on using LLMs safely and securely as a data scientist and how to think about integrating an LLM into a data science project. Where the right places to integrate that are probably some other things that I would put in there.
Right.
That's the big thing though. Like I can't think of anything I wrote that I'm like, oh, that was a mess.
Right.
But definitely just like the world has changed since I wrote the book, sort of more than I could have predicted. At least when I started it, maybe by the time I was done, it was obvious, but certainly when I started, it was not obvious that this was going to be such a big thing. And I, that not being addressed, I think, is a real weakness of the book as it exists. Not that that was a mistake, but just
Right.
you know, uh, probably makes it less interesting to read.
Again, I think there are like, a million things that are covering that piece right now.
There
So
are,
having the
yeah,
background is still really, really useful.
yes,
Um,
yeah.
Do you want to, Josh? I see that you put a couple of questions in the sheet. Do you want to just ask them, or do you want
Yeah,
me to?
sure. I'm happy to ask
All
them.
right.
Um, I guess going with the first one. I feel like one of the through lines of your book is that data scientists are like software engineers. We should use some code tools, infrastructure as code, all that. Um, but maybe not all data scientists see themselves like that and like don't see the value of like maybe using a virtual environment, like infrastructure as code or using Git or something like that. Is that tension, I guess, or that difference in viewpoint something you've come across? Um, Specifically for my own selfish use case, like how can I convince my colleagues that we should be using like a virtual environment for our projects? Um, Anything related to that question would be
Yeah,
helpful.
I think it's a great question. I think there are a couple of things. One is that like I do think that like you don't have a choice in this is kind of like I say it pretty explicitly in the book. It's like you don't have a choice about this. You are doing software engineering, even if like you really just wanted to do data, like you're doing software engineering and you can choose to do it well or you can choose to do it badly. You don't have the choice not to do it, right? It's like do I want to be good at this important thing or do I want to not be good at it? You can make that choice, but you can't choose not to do it. It's just sort of not an option. And so, but like, I think it is true that you do see a lot of teams where they're like, but I don't want, right? Like, I'm a statistician, I'm a, biostats person, I'm a economist. Like, I don't care about software, right? That's not the questions they care about. And so I do think like, if you're the person on your team who cares about this, the best thing you can do is make it really easy to do right. And I think the good news there is that I think the tooling has gotten a lot better, right? Like when I started at Posit now like 7 years ago, and I know the R ecosystem better than any other, but like at the time, right, like Packrat was the state of the art for environment management, and it was a pain in the ass. And like now you have a lot of these tools that are just way better, and they actually in many ways are easier to use. Like you have to learn how to use the tool a little bit, but once you learn how to do it, it's actually a better experience than not using it. That I think has changed. That like the tools have just gotten better and more ergonomic. Um, and so like if you're using like rig and pack, and again, I'm speaking about R here. Python has their own tools that happy to talk about. But like if you're using those tools well, your life is actually better, right? Like I've been doing a lot of Python lately, and I use poetry a lot, and like it's just a nicer experience than using vanilla pip and like whatever. Particularly if you're using it with an AI, because the AI just knows how to use it. You just say like use poetry, and it just does it. Um, and so I think that's really the key is like if you're trying to bring a team along on this, you have to sort of get it set up for them and make it easy. And I would say the other thing is like if you have access to it, the LLMs know how to like they know how to do Git ops. And so if you can, you can do things like creating slash commands that make it really easy to do this stuff. I think that's the way to win here. There's some level of like, I'm writing this code, I'm only ever going to run it once. And you're like, well, why would I bother with all this? And to some degree, like my answer to that is like, okay, then have a place where you put all your ad hoc queries that you only ever run once that has all of this sort of in it. But like that ends up being sort of like a hazardous waste site, which I guess is okay, right? You only want like one of those. Keeping it self-contained is good. Um, but I think one of the other things that I try to is that like, and I think this is true of life, that like technology is easy and people are hard. And so like people are hard and if they don't want to learn something, it's pretty hard to convince them that they do. But again, if you can make it easier, if you can set up the guardrails so like, there's a good README in every repo, they understand that like, oh, I just go look at the README and that tells me how to get started and it's really easy. That can definitely help, right? Like just lowering that barrier and making them not have to learn the tool so much, but just be able to use it without having to learn a ton. Because if people aren't that interested in the software engineering side of it, it's hard to convince them that they should be interested.
Okay, awesome.
Honestly,
Thank
I
you.
think that's one of the
Yeah.
weaknesses of the book, right? Like this book has not exactly sold gangbusters. And I think it's because like it's pretty hard to convince people that they should be interested in this unless they like know the pain. Once you know the pain, I think you want it. But like if you don't, you don't. And it's hard to convince people to care about this kind of stuff.
Feel like that, like there are a lot of us who accidentally had this job at
Yes.
a company, and so those people just need to find out about the book, and then because I would have killed for this at a previous job that I had, where I was trying to figure all this stuff out for myself.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think there's a lot of value in it. And I think for people, again, who have realized that they want to learn this stuff, I hope it's a valuable resource. But I do think there's some amount of like convincing people that they should learn this over going and like spending their time with Claude. It's a it's a high bar in today's world.
That is fair. Uh, I heard that he Alex partially answered your second question in there, but
Yeah.
I don't think it's quite 100%. Because you mentioned the having a place for the stuff that doesn't feel like it like deserves the full process. And do you have any guidance on how to decide how much effort to put into reproducibility, documentation, all the stuff in the book for um, a small ad hoc analysis versus, some larger project.
Yeah, I mean, I think to me there's sort of like two things I think about, and that I don't have a particular like these are just like the considerations, not the rules. But like the real questions are like, how important is it that I get this right? And how many more times am I gonna have to run this? And like if the answer is I'm never running it again and it's not very important, like I wouldn't put much effort into it. If the answer is like, boy, this better be right, or you know, I'm gonna have to run it over and over and over again. Like that's that, those are the big questions to me that I think about on like, okay, do I need to spend a bunch of time on this, or can I just sort of YOLO it into existence? Um, and you know, I don't know that there's any particular like like score that you can come up with where you're like, hey, this is a 10, so I'm gonna do this. But I mean, I guess you could invent that. I certainly haven't. But just the idea that like what matters is can I afford for this thing to be wrong? If I can't, then I better spend some time sort of checking it and bulletproofing it, for lack of a better term. Um, and if I need to run it again, will, you know, I will hate past me if I don't do the things that I need to do to make it easy to rerun. And so those are kind of the two key questions I think about, at least. That's not a very good answer, but I don't have the better one.
Well, I do think like once you have any project where this stuff makes sense, it's not that hard to do it for every project after that,
That's very
or at
true.
least to a degree. Like once you kind of have the process, um, a lot of this stuff, you know, partly because once you've done it, you're like, oh God, that made these other steps so much easier. So why not throw it in case you need it? A lot of times, or at least, you know, I don't know. I say to a degree, but I couldn't tell you exactly what I would cut out of pretty much anything. Like, uh, so,
Yeah, no, I
um,
totally agree with that. That like, a lot of it's about that activation energy of like if you're just in the habit of using virtual environments, like doing it in a new project is super easy because right, like you just start another one and it brings in all the packages automatically. If you're not in the habit, then it's a and I find this these days, right? Like I've been doing a lot of Python, I've been doing very little R. And so that every once in a while when I do an R project, I have this like emotion or like moral dilemma for myself. I'm like, do I start an RN environment for this project because like I don't have an RN environment on the current version of R, and so I'd actually have to install the package, or do I just like YOLO it and then I am like, well, I feel like a bad person if I don't. I literally wrote the book on this topic, and so like probably I should, but sometimes I don't. And but yeah, I think John, like a lot of it is about like how how much do you have just ready to, you sort of pre-baked and ready to go? If you have a lot of it pre-baked, then it's easy, you know?
Mimicking things that we have gone through. Arthur, do you want to come off mute and ask what you put in there? We have not already covered it. I can.
Sure. Sorry.
Okay.
I joined a little bit late. Sorry, my computer was really having a day today. So my question is the following, and I guess it kind of piggybacks off of Josh's question a little bit, is in R, although I hear you, Alex, are working more in Python these days, what's your go-to method for kind of having a different R version per project? That's been a dilemma for me. I know rig exists, but I also seem to remember looking at the documentation and thinking, IT won't allow that. Um, and then maybe as a bonus question, which I guess kind of suggests a potential answer, what do you think about Nix? I know that's been made more easily available by, the Rix package and also wrappers like Devbops, etc. Thanks.
Yeah, I have not played with Nix much at all, so I can't say that I have a strong or really any informed opinion there. I will say like uh when I was the best answer I had when I was really working in this full time was the Posit professional products, right? This was a feature that they included both in Workbench and in Connect that it sort of like helped you manage multiple R versions and having different versions of R per piece of content. Um, I was, and again, like I haven't spent any time with Nix or Rick, so I don't know if they really solved this problem. I always thought it was pretty funny that this was a like an unsolved problem in the open source community. That was weird to me, but like there was not a great open source solution for this when I was working at Posit, which was what I left 8 months ago. So I haven't been keeping up with this rigorously in the last 8 months, but as of 8 months ago, like by a significant margin, the best solution was just to use the Posit professional products. There were other sort of hacky solutions like Linux environment modules or other kinds of things, but like they weren't very good. And you could do things with Docker containers, but again, like it gets messy really quickly. And so at least as of 8 months ago, and this isn't a great answer, but like when I worked at Posit, it was sort of a relief that there wasn't a great open source answer to this because like that was part of what we sold our professional products based on. But I was always surprised that there wasn't a better open source solution for this use case. So sort of a non-answer, unless you have a bunch of money that you want to spend on Connect or Workbench.
I'm praying that UV will conquer the R community.
That what will?
UV.
Oh, nice. Yeah. I mean, that'd be cool. I mean, I think Rig, yeah, I mean, Rig is really helpful here. It is definitely oriented more at the like individual user rather than the like a sort of IT sanctified way of doing this. Oh, RV is kind of very cool. Yeah, great. Would love to see more open source solutions on this front, especially now that my job security does not depend on it.
All right. Well, Diana, do you want to ask away?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Alex, in the introduction, you mentioned Agile, and you have a whole section that's devoted for Agile software. And I feel like some years ago, like Agile was in the conversation, and now I don't think anyone is talking about Agile anymore. Do you think that is because like everyone adopted it? Like, is it kind of like a given, and now we can just like build on top of that, or do you think there's still work to do in that area?
It's an interesting question. I think it's a great question. I'm curious what others think as well, but like I think yes, Agile won, completely won in terms of what people think they're doing and what we talk about, right? Like as a principle, everybody says they're doing Agile. I think though, like the thing about Agile is that it's a way of working, and ways of working are like it takes a lot of effort and work to maintain those ways of working new team members join, old team members leave. And I think like most projects drift away from an agile way of work, right? Like it's just a natural, like it's a little bit of like there's an entropy to it that like over time you just lose the agility of a project or of a team. And so like maintaining that actually is a fair like it's fairly laborious to stay agile over time. And I think a lot of teams don't, right? They like say they're doing agile, but actually they have not done any of the work to actually achieve that over time. And so I think like those lessons are no less, like one of my favorite books about software development is called The Mythical Man Month, which like bad title, right? Like, yes, and the book itself actually has a lot of like pretty bad gender stuff in it, but it's a great book. And like nothing that it explains is irrelevant. The book's from 1976, I think. And it's like still an amazing book about working on software together because like again it's just people problems. And so I think like agile very correctly pointed out a bunch of people problems, and people are like, yeah, we're doing agile, but people problems don't go away, they just keep happening. And so like I think it has fallen out of the conversation because actually, right, like the main reason is because the people who wanted you to spend money on their tool have won, right? Like everybody has Jira, or they have they're using GitHub issues, or they're right, like people have just adopted those tools. And like the reason why there was such a loud conversation around it is because people had something to sell you that it was in their interest to keep that in the conversation. Like now they've sold you that thing and they're trying to sell you maybe the same tools, but agentic, because that's the hot marketing term these days. And so like this is becoming very cynical very fast. But like I think like yeah, agile is still great. It's fallen in the
Yeah.
conversation because nobody's trying to sell you anything anymore.
I also have seen a fair amount of like anti-agile backlash from, which I think is more against the training courses in agile and their vision or their image of agile, which isn't necessarily even any form of real agile. Um, I do feel like it's another one of these things that as we work with AI more and start to develop systems, we're going to reinvent agile, just like we're reinventing test-driven development of, oh, hey, look, if you make it write tests, it'll write better code. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
So,
the
yeah.
company that I work at, right? I work at a company called Kilo Code right now, which is developing an open source agentic coding platform. And
Yeah.
like we put a lot of focus on like basically like w individual developers working with AIs, shipping small amounts of code on a very regular basis, like like is that agile? You tell me. Like,
Yeah.
it sounds pretty agile to me, right? But like, there is a difference, right? That we're talking about it being not small teams, but individual developers owning
Right.
sort of a section of the product, which I think is like that is newly possible because of AI. That all of a sudden a single developer can just own a larger scope of product than they used to be able to. I think that's really interesting.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, we're just doing agile. Like, it's just agile,
Yeah.
but like there's a little twist on it, and so we're going to call it something different. People are selling new tools, and so they're going to say there's a like no, this is not the same thing, because why would you buy it if it's just the old thing, right? And so I think like John, I totally agree with you that like yeah, we're just reinventing agile, we're reinventing test-driven development, but we got to call it something new, because otherwise, why would you buy something new to do the same thing you've been doing for what 30 years now? You know?
I do think it's valid for um, you know, a lot of research slash experience has gone into developing these practices, but then you're like, oh, I'm working with an agent, it's a totally different thing. But best practices are still best practices. And so I think that is kind of well, I am saying all this because I have like recently really gotten into working uh with agents versus I've been working with AI related things for a long time. But doing agentic coding and just showing people, look, if you just say these little magic words of like have it write the test first and things, look how much better it gets. Um, And it's like that is just software best practices. It's just we didn't realize, but like I've heard many times, I've said it many times that a agents are like a junior developer that you're working with, that you have to really carefully check what they do, and all these things. And it's like, yeah, also you need to teach them these for best practices that have been around. So anyway, um, uh, moving on, Josh, do you want to ask your next one? That
Yeah,
actually fits into this whole. I think we're threading this pretty well. So
yeah, agreed. Um, yeah, my question's about like workflow, agile, tracking things, and specifically, we have found that with our small team, using agile is like a lot of work, to fight against entropy and like the enslopification of our backlog and all that. So I guess for like small teams without like project manager, how do you recommend, how do you see small teams like tracking their work? We have tried using our work tracking platform, Azure DevOps, but it just always feels like a fight. And do at what size or maturity do you see tools like that really being valuable? Any ways to make it easier to use them for small teams? Um, any insights or advice would be appreciated.
Yeah, I think it's a great question, right? Like, again, I guess I'm just repping Mythical Man Month on this chat, because like one of his primary observations is that as a team gets bigger, right, the number of intrapersonal connections scales with n squared, right? It's n squared minus one connections on a team of n size. And so like what that means is that as team scale grows, the complexity of managing that team grows exponentially, right? It doesn't grow linearly with team size. And so like I think the question you're asking is a really great one, because like if you're working, I don't know how big you're like, is your team like is like four or something?
It's like three. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So right, like, and I think what that means is that like the difficulty of managing the work of a team of three is not half as hard as the managing a team of six. It is a fourth as complicated as managing the work of a team of six people. And many of these tools were designed not around managing a team of three or a team of six, but a team of 600, right? And so the level of complexity that these tools are designed to attack is just so much more than a sort of one or two pizza team, right? Like they're just like they're designed around this use case of math, because that's where the money is in enterprise software, right? It's with the big companies. And so they are designed around the use case of helping, you know, Microsoft manage the entire Windows team. That's not the problem that you have. And so like I would, uh my I found a lot of success working on small teams with like ultra simple um patterns, which is like now, next, later, with like a bunch of tickets, right? Like that's it. And like whatever tool you're using, just do that. I find that things that are more complicated than that, you end up you bring in a lot of overhead and there's very little benefit on a small team, has just been my experience. Um I even so, particularly that later category gets so uh enslopified. I feel like that's a great word for it. Uh because it is just so, like I mean it really this is entropy, right? Like chaos reigns unless you keep it really tightly groomed. And so I think developing some, I mean, I'm speaking entirely from theory here. I don't feel like I've ever actually accomplished this, but like developing some team practices about grooming that later. Or actually my favorite one is just to throw the only way I've ever done this successfully actually is we just threw out the later. We just did not pay attention to it, and we just trusted that anything that was important would come back up. That was the way we did it, is like anything that didn't get into next, right? Like it would be like we would collect all the things, we would move things into now and next, and everything else just got thrown away, just went away. If they were good ideas, they came back, and usually if they were there still, they actually would be out of date by the time they were even relevant. And so like not maintaining that later bucket actually was the one time I've seen this work best on the team I worked with. Um, but yeah, no, I think it's like you look at a lot of these tools and it's sort of exciting. And I think like for many of us with engineer brain, it's like exciting to be like, yeah, I'm going to put the things in the tool. I'm going to put the numbers on the things and I'm going to check them off. It's great. And then like you need to actually that you're like not actually doing work at that point, right? It's like work like. Um, so yeah, I don't think, particularly for small teams, right? Like I think for big teams, you need some real craft around managing it. And I think like the honest truth is just that like it's actually just really, really hard to do. Um, but I think for small teams, the simpler you can go, the better, because it's easy to invent a lot of machinery and not actually have much benefit from it.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I'm curious, like, does that resonate for you, or are you like, nah, dude, we got to use Azure DevOps?
No, I fundamentally just want to like learn from other work my team has done. So if they've opened up a similar ticket, I can go see how they like any comments they wrote, or like if it's synced up to a Git repo, I can check out their code. But Azure DevOps, at least, like it seems to almost guide you towards more complexity, I guess, because it is built for bigger projects. And I'm like,
Right.
I don't know how to make it any simpler unless we find a different platform than Azure DevOps. But
Yeah,
the idea about the later, like if the business people don't come back asking for it, it probably doesn't need to be pulled out of like the later bin. It can just
yeah. I don't know if you read
quietly
the book.
finesse.
Read the book 4,000 Weeks: Time Management for Mortals. Another great book. This one is like it's in fact an anti-time management book. And his argument basically is like you've got approximately 4,000 weeks in your entire life. And the there is so much you could do in you will never be able to do all the things that you want to do in that time. And so the best thing you can do is just refuse to do things that don't super matter. And I think like I've always found this a difficult trade-off to strike for myself personally, because I think I have a very personal uh, drive to like be dependable. And so like if somebody asks me for something, I want to like deliver it, right? But that's a trade-off between like they just ask me for something random. Do they actually need it? Do I actually need to do this? And if I become the person to whom all of the spare tasks can go, I end up with a lot of bullshit to do that is not important.
Yeah.
Um, and so like I don't again I don't have a this is a like I think eternal problem to try and figure out what you want to do there. But I do think there is some value actually in being undependable, in that like it helps filter out unimportant tasks that like if you are dependable enough, you will get done all the unimportant things. But really what you need to do is focus on the important things.
Yeah.
Again, like I'm speaking more here from theory than any way I actually live my life, but like 4,000 Weeks is a great book. Strong recommend on that one as well.
Thank you. That speaks to my core because yeah, I just go eagerly do the things, and sometimes they're probably not that important. Before I be quiet,
I mean,
another book you
that's a topic to
recommended.
also take up in therapy as well as.
Very true. Just to plug another book you recommended in your DevOps book, The Phoenix Project. It was in a footnote. I read it at your recommendation in the footnote.
That's
Very
a fun one, right?
entertaining. Very entertaining.
Yeah.
I think you described it as like a romance.
I stole that description from my colleague Kelly at Posit. She recommended it to me that way.
Okay,
And yeah,
but it totally
I'm
lives up
glad
to
you enjoyed
that.
it. I'm glad I'll have to reach out to her and tell her that somebody read it on
Yeah,
my passed along recommendation and enjoyed it. Yeah, it's a
that's
fun
good.
one.
Thank you.
Yeah, I
Keep them
love I
coming.
love those business books that are like a novel. Like they're so silly and they're so fun. I really, really enjoy them.
Yeah, it was a page
That's
turner.
funny. Awesome. Well, and all of these so far have also had audible versions, which I like. I'm a big uh ear reader. Uh, cool. Diana, you want to go ahead and ask your next follow-up?
Yes. Yes. So in the last chapter of the book, when you talk about like package repositories, you mentioned yeah that there are some enterprises that might have like a centralized package repository that the IT
Yeah.
people manage, and then data science teams will just like pull from them. And I was like, how big of a company does it have to have a centralized package repository? Like, and I wanted to ask, like, throughout your interactions with different companies, how often like do you encounter like centralized data science teams versus just
Mm,
small data science teams that manage their own environments and their own
yeah.
packages and everything?
It's a great question. And I think they're really two separate questions because like there's this question of like how do you centrally manage the like access and security of an open source supply chain, right? And like big companies have policies about that no matter where the teams sit. So like I've worked with large organizations that have very decentralized data science teams, but very centralized like package management kind of solutions because they're like, no, no, this is not a data science question. This is a, security and supply chain question. And like the IT team is like, we're going to own that. We don't care who's using this. And like many of them do have highly decentralized data science teams where they might have 10 or 20 little teams throughout the company, but they're like, but you all are going to use these repositories because we can't let anything in that doesn't meet our sort of security and sort of supply chain requirements. And so, you know, I'm trying to think of like what the smallest team was that had a centralized repository. Like, I don't know, it was probably a company of 1,000 people. Like, not super big in the scale of companies, but like, not a small company. There is actually, I mean, I can't remember. I think Dana-Farber was a POSIT customer. I think they might have had Package Manager. I don't remember.
I think we are now because they're gonna make a demo on the pository
Okay, cool.
system.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, and so like, like particularly for folks working with healthcare data, right? Either PII, HIPAA data, right? Like there's an extra level of security there. And so there you did see some smaller companies have some of those tools because they might have those higher security requirements. Like I don't know exactly where you're in the business, but if you're working with like clinical data that has patient identified, right? Like there's a really high standard for working with that data because it is so secure. Um, and so in a lot of ways, right? Like it was mostly about the sort of security and risk tolerance of the business. And that like sort of the question was a little more about how do we manage like open source software in general than anything particularly the data science team. Um, the data science team. And like to some degree, what I'm talking about is like there were relatively few organizations that pulled this off successfully. I think it's like a hard thing to manage that balance, right? And you have to have an IT organization that's pretty willing and interested to sort of work with you and figure out how this is going to work. Um, but very often they're going to insist. And so your only choice is to like work with them and figure out how to like get them to give you those packages and having a tool that you can say like, hey, use the tool to give us the package. We're not going to, just download stuff willy-nilly is like a place to start a conversation with them instead of them being like hard pass, we're not doing this because that's often the first answer is like, no, you just can't use that. And being able to bring in a tool and uh, somebody they can yell at when the tool breaks, which is like a big part of that. It can be really helpful in that discussion.
Yeah. No, thank you, thank you. Yeah, you completely clarified that because I haven't thought about what you say. Like it's two different things. Like the data science teams can still be really small, but the security should make it like into a centralized thing.
Yeah, exactly. And so, yeah, the way companies organize their data science teams is like everybody does it differently, as I've observed. Like even what executive does the data science team report up into inside the organization is like totally different organization to organization. Um, and it's totally dependent on like what is the data science team doing and what is the relationship of what the data science team is doing to the like core value of the business, right? If you're Meta and your product basically is a data science project, for better or worse, like then your data science team is gonna be really central to the business. And like at Meta, right, like data science is a third leg of the stool. They have like engineering, product, data science, and that's like the core team of the company. Whereas like at a company where, you know, it's an auto parts supplier, right? You're going to see a very different thing where like data science may be part of the finance team because mostly what they're doing is like forecasting revenue and demand and that kind of stuff. And that's a very different relationship of data science to the core business that the company is doing. And I think it makes sense that data science ends up in all kinds of weird places and weird structures because it's used so differently in every business depending on the business and how data matters to that business.
Makes sense. Uh, Arthur, can you come off mute and probably close us out?
Sure. Apologies in advance for the long, rambly introduction to this question, but I guess I'll treat you a little bit like AI and provide lots of context and
Great,
hopes
I
to have
love
a
it.
groovy answer. So this your book has really been, I think, one of the most useful books for me in a long time. In the
So
programming
glad to hear
sphere.
that.
It really came at the right time. I've kind of gotten the works on my machine badge. I've gotten the works on other people's machine badge, but the work on a server badge is the one that I'm still kind of striving for. I guess the little bit of the wrinkle is like I also work in an org that's kind of really large, has a really large IT department, the spread into atomized little groups where, in short, I'm not allowed to touch a lot of the things that are in your book. And so I'm kind of wondering, maybe for me and for other people in my position, what would you think would be the best, like the next step? Like, what's the book you read or the tutorial you do, the cert you get after your book? Thanks.
Yeah, I think this is the place where it's a great question, right? And I think like this is why I wrote the book the way I did and why I sort of ordered it the way I did, where like the first section is about like stuff you can do as an individual data scientist. And the second section is about like stuff you can do if you're like sort of managing a server. And the third section is about like stuff you're going to have to go ask somebody else to do. And I think like you're very firmly in that third category. And the sort of unfortunate reality, but just like the reality is that like if that's the situation you're in, the best thing you can do is try and find a tool to go do some of this because that is like like tools are the language that IT teams speak basically, right? Like that is the way they think about these things is like there is a tool to do this, somebody owns that tool, somebody does the things that tool does and works with it, right? Unless you're talking about like really core, you know, network. Like and so like that is often the place to start. The hard thing about that is that like you may need to get budget for that tool and you may not have the authority to get that budget, and so you have to go convince somebody to like work with you on that, and like we're back to people problems, and people problems are hard. um but I think like the reality is that in a big organization, like th the IT team is not going to want to talk to you about, you know, open source package management. What they'll talk to you about is like, hey, we're adopting this tool. I need somebody to help me with adopting this tool, right? They have like that's the way they think about problems is they're like, oh, we're adopting this tool. We'll assign somebody to go work on getting this tool implemented. Which is sort of an unsatisfying answer, but like it is fundamentally the way IT teams work, that is like what they do. And so if you can speak their language in terms of, hey, I've got a tool, it's been procured or we're in the process of procuring it. We need somebody to work with us on this. Like that is probably a much quicker path to success than trying to explain why like you need to go do this or that. I don't know if that answers your question, but it is it
And I think
is
that helps.
it is sort of the way this world works, which is weird. Um, but John, I'm curious. I'm curious if you have a take here.
Uh, n- Kind of fortunately right now, no. In that I've gone into the world where the answer for everything is posit, and it's all set up, and I don't have to push on that as much anymore. So that's been
It's a
really
good
nice.
tool.
Yeah, yeah. Especially, well, I don't know, like it cracks me up some of the places that I've like gone through where they pay for posit. They don't really use posit.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
so they have the
yeah,
full suite. And I'm like, oh yeah, I can build this API or use this API and rebuild this data source every night and whatever. They're like, you can do what now? I'm like, yeah, I just like okay. So anyway, but yeah, um I, I could see um certifications of some types being part of the key to kind of get listened to a little more. I haven't ever taken that route. It was like the place I used to work where I was in this kind of, I was almost sysadmin type, but then we also had people who like were in control of things. And that was where the book would have been super useful. And I was like on the verge of getting some certification that was recommended to me by them. And I think that can be helpful, but I think it just really, really depends on where you are. Um, but like showing them that you're serious about kind of help or, you know, transitioning into that side of the world. Uh,
yeah. I mean, I guess
yeah.
if you want to transition to that side of the world, more
Hmm.
power to you and get those certifications.
Right.
I'm generally a little skeptical of like
Yeah.
an IT person being like, you should go get this certification, then I will pay attention to you. I'm like, that sounds like a trap to me.
Well,
So
yeah,
like,
no, I'm definitely saying more
oh no, I'm agreeing with you,
that you've done
Josh.
it. Yeah. You don't do it on their advice necessarily, although, to a degree, but like if it sounds like they're just trying to get rid of you or something, don't do that. But if it's something that is kind of like normal uh, in that wing, yeah,
Yeah.
I don't have a
And
great
they
answer
they may
on
not even
this.
like they may not even be meaning to like deceive you, right? But it's like, in most companies, the things you're allowed to do are determined by in large companies at least, right? It's determined by like where you sit in the company.
All right.
And it doesn't matter if you have whatever certification if you're in a different part of the company. Like it's just like,
Yeah.
no, that you don't get to do that thing if you're not on this team. And so I think like going and getting a certification because then they'll listen to you better. Like that sounds like a trap to me. And so
Oh
the
yeah.
question is really like, how do you communicate in the language that they might actually listen to you? Uh,
It's part
and
of what the book's about.
yeah, yeah. But it's not right again, like people problems. They're hard.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. Sorry, Arthur. I don't have a very satisfying answer for
No,
you.
no, no. I think these are all great points. I think I take away from this, among other things, that definitely being able to talk the talk will help people understand and listen to you better, I think. Yeah. I've experienced that certainly when in some recent requests. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. Being able to talk the talk and also like by doing that assure people that you care about the things that they care, right? Like they're like, oh, this
Yeah.
person understands and cares about my world. I think does go a really long way because they're going to be like, oh, this person is not just hurling BS requests at me. They like care about the things I care about. They understand it well enough to ask a good question, and I think that goes a long way.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Well, that pretty much brings us to the end of this hour. So I just want to, thank you again for the book and then for joining us to talk about it.
Yeah, thank you all.
Um,
This was really fun. As I sort of mentioned, like I really haven't thought that much about it in a while. I've been busy with a kid and also just like these days it's not really what I work on. And so this
Yeah.
is really fun. I really am grateful to you all for reading it and chatting.
All right. Well, thank you very much. And I'll see everyone on Slack.
Thank
Thank
you
you
so
all.
Thanks so
much.
much, Alex.
Thanks
Take care.
very
All
much.
right.